Lovely. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our third session of our Nursing Now Challenge Global Solutions Initiative. This is the third session with our wonderful collaborators, partners, FoNS, Foundation of Nursing Studies. And today we are in the final stages of this Global Solutions Initiative. Clinical Supervision, we are going to hear from the team. The next hour will be very engaging. There will also be opportunity for interactive working also from the team. And I am now going to keep this very short, which is unlike me, and hand over to the Chief Exec of the Foundation of Nursing Studies. That is Joanne Bosanquet.
Okay, thank you, Aisha, and good morning, everybody. Good afternoon and good evening to our fabulous colleagues that have been following our 3 webinars over the last couple of months. And it's an absolute joy. It's a beautiful day. I can see all my spring flowers coming into bloom, and it's a lovely end to the week to spend time with you today. So I would love to introduce you, first of all, back to Grace Cook, who is our facilitator for resilience-based clinical supervision and actually the lead for the programme. So it's Grace's baby, which is extremely important to us. So I'll hand you over to Grace, and then Grace will take you through some claims, concerns and issues that we'll do, and some leadership perspectives of 2 clinical leaders that they're both friends of FoNS. One is Jill Knight, who is the nursing officer for Wales and works with Sue Tranker, and many of you will know from my social media activity that Wales have managed to get clinical supervision into policy, and I'm hoping that we will follow soon within England. So we are really thrilled to have Jill with us. And then we've got also great friend of FoNS, Charlotte, from Gloucestershire Hospitals, who will be talking through their experiences of clinical supervision. So over to Grace. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Joanne. And hi, everyone. Again, as Joanne said, my name's Grace. I'm a mental health nurse by background, and a massive advocate really for clinical supervision. And as Joanne said, the programme I lead on at FoNS is called Resilience-Based Clinical Supervision, and I've mentioned that throughout the other webinars. And so this is our last time together. So to start with, this is where I get confused with IT. I will share. I have to click share. I just wanted to remind you all of the challenge. So what we would like you to do is to develop a plan to encourage the acceptance of clinical supervision, and in particular restorative clinical supervision in your workplace. And the prize we've spoken about, we're really excited that we're going to run a full programme. So we have 6 places on offer for one of our programmes for you to become a facilitator of resilience-based clinical supervision. So we're really excited about that, and I thought it'd be really useful. I'll stop sharing now. If anyone's ever been on a programme with me before, you know I am a bit of a flicker between people's faces and the sharing the slides. So the guidelines are on the Nursing Now website, and I'll just share these now. So what we have done on these guidelines, it kind of goes through how you can get started, what we'd like you to do, which as usual for Nursing Now is a concept note, so 800 to 1,000 words maximum. We are open to really creative expressions as well. So if you want to include pictures or anything that's kind of creative, we once had someone share a poem with in one of the interviews we were doing, which was really powerful. So we're open to creative expressions within that as well. And we want you to give us some details about you. But firstly, kind of tell us about your context. So where are you working at the moment? What is going on there in terms of clinical supervision? And this could be, if you're a student at the moment, it could be the university that you are at, or it could be a placement that you're on. What does clinical supervision look like in that area? Why do you think it looks like that? What are the benefits of it? Or if it's not there, you know, what might introducing clinical supervision or changes within the current structure look like, and why do you want that? So there's some prompt questions here, and we'd like you to tell us a little bit about your context and why clinical supervision is important in that. And then we'd like you to share your ideas and really develop a plan to encourage, you know, people to get involved and engage with clinical supervision in your area, so that you have access to it. So this is where the kind of leadership comes in, and this is what we're going to be focusing on today. So for the last couple of sessions, we've looked at what clinical supervision is, what the benefits are. We thought about what good clinical supervision looks like, both from kind of a personal perspective, but also an organizational one. So now it's thinking about, so what do I do with this information? How do I influence the people around us? Which is what we're going to be doing today. And then finally, within your concept note, we want you to tell us what winning this prize is going to mean for you. What do you want to do with that? You know, the learning that you are going to take from it, and how will it impact both you personally, but also the area that you're working in. And so those guidelines that I'm sharing at the moment are available online. And now I can't figure out how to stop sharing. No, I've done it now. It's because we usually use Teams. So yeah, that is the focus of today, and the guidelines are online where you signed up. So if you have a look at those, and hopefully what we do today will help you with that as well. And so today is all about what you do with this information. And if I share my screen again, I wanted to start off by sharing this. So this is a graphic by someone called Sonia Sparkles. If you've not heard of Sonia Sparkles, she does some really lovely graphics all around kind of health and social care, and how there's lots of useful resources on her website. So I definitely check it out if you're interested. But what I particularly like is this circle of control. And so I wanted to start with this. So when you're kind of a student, when you're a newly registered nurse, throughout your career and throughout your life, there are some things that you have no control over at all. And this is often things that are happening kind of in the ether. You know, we have global staffing issues within nursing. One individual has very little control over that, depending on, you know, roles. Some people have a bit of influence, but it's about working together. But actually, these are things that you have no control over. These are things that happen, and they can be called the kind of macro context. So you need to be aware of them, and they can have an impact on you, but you cannot change them. We then have some things that we can control and influence, and this can be kind of the relationships we build, the information we choose to share with other people, and the opportunities that we take and then share with other people. And then we have things that we have full control over. And the things that we have full control over are essentially what we choose to do. We can't control what other people choose to do, but we have full control over our actions and how we choose to behave and respond to things. And I think when we're thinking about clinical supervision, this is really important to remember. The places that you work or study have a responsibility to provide places for reflective practice, and clinical supervision is one of those. And you cannot decide for them what they are going to do, but actually you can influence and you can share what you've learned throughout this challenge and what you may look at in terms of clinical supervision. And you have control over how you decide to take that information and how you decide to use it. And so I really wanted to kind of highlight that in terms of thinking about what you can control and who you can influence. Because actually thinking about who within your area of work you want to influence and who is really important to be able to influence is really, really key. And so what we thought would be really useful today is to actually think about who the people who have influence, who may have more influence, but, you know, leadership perspectives of clinical supervision. You know, we thought about what good looks like, but actually we've not thought about why someone would support clinical supervision. So we're really pleased, and I'm glad you've managed to get in, both of you, to have Jill Knight from Wales and Charlotte from Gloucestershire to share their kind of thoughts about clinical supervision and why they want to support that. So I'm not going to introduce you any further. Joanne did do a bit of introduction to you right at the start, and I know knows you both really, really well. But if you could introduce yourselves, your roles, and then share a bit about why you support, what you've been doing with clinical supervision and why you support it. Does anyone have a preference about which one of you goes first?
Happy for Aisha to go first.
Oh, it's Charlotte. Do you want to go first, Charlotte?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Charlotte Hall. I am the lead for education and skills development at Gloucestershire Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust. I am also a professional advocate, and I have been highly involved with the Nursing Now Challenge over the last, well, God, many years now, many years, since the birth, actually. So I've had really great opportunities to work with probably people in this space also, but very proud to be still linked very closely to the Nursing Now Challenge. So that's me. I don't know if Jill wants to introduce herself. Would you want me to say a bit about why this is important to me? Carry on. Right, okay. Well, so I mean, from my perspective, so I guess what I'd like to offer to this conversation is kind of, for me, more importantly, how we influence others to engage with both the support and the delivery of like clinical supervision in practice, because often, you know, we'll say there's no time for this. Well, actually, we must make time. It's something we have to have. It's really key that we recognize that. So kind of one of the key things that I've learned over my time in both, you know, I'm really privileged to be in a role where I'm formulating education and learning and support, and over the years that's changed. I've had different roles, both clinical, non-clinical, etc., and different opportunities to deliver on clinical supervision, and as part of my PA role as well, I've had probably about 3 different job roles since I've become a PA. So that's looked very different in each of those roles. But I think when we talk about things that can have learnt, things that I have learnt, I think what I refer to is that space for people that we have to create to allow them to think, reflect and share, and do that openly and safely. So we don't just kind of help individuals in this, we can help teams, services, and ultimately all of that in turn helps the care we deliver and the patients we look after. And I think, you know, I wholeheartedly believe in the support of and delivery of clinical supervision, because it's not a luxury, it's not an add-on. It's a critical tool actually for maintaining quality, safety, and well-being of our workforce, and so it's integral to what we do. And I guess in terms of influence, how might someone convince me or someone else, you know, in a role to kind of get behind that, to give time to it, to create space for it? Well, I'd say it's about making that real for people. I think that's really important. So you know, show or demonstrate, and maybe that is on a smaller scale, on a micro scale, but it matters. That realness matters. So show how kind of supervision links to, you know, the things that we care about: retention, resilience, improved decision making, safer care, you know, bringing in stories, not just data but real stories, and demonstrating that kind of feedback of impact it has on people is really key to getting people to embed this and recognize its importance. So I think, you know, it's about framing it as an enabler, because if we're doing that, more people will buy into us being able to create space for it. And again, not just for individuals, but for whole systems. And that's really key as well. It's not just about individuals. It's important for individuals, but it is about that whole system thinking. And I guess further to that is we need to make it a shared ownership. So if we recognize we all have our role to play in that, we can work towards normalizing supervision as part of everyday culture, and that's where we need to be. That's where we need to get to. And you know, it's not something you necessarily need to ask permission for. It's something that's actually expected. It's part of our values. It's part of who we are, what we do. And the more we can influence having that, the more we can get it embedded in a longer term delivery of what we do as a standard way we practice. So I guess I'd encourage people to kind of think about, you know, what can I bring? What do I bring to that in terms of influence, and how can I model that kind of reflective and supportive practice, you know, that clinical supervision offers. So yeah, I think that's probably me yabbered on quite a bit there.
Thank you, Charlotte. That's really brilliant. So I'll hand over to you, Jill.
Just get myself off mute. Apologies. I am covering for the CNO today, and I was pulled into a comms meeting just before joining, so I missed the introductions, Joe. So thank you. My name is Jill Knight. I have just been appointed as the Deputy Chief Nurse for Wales. So I have been a nursing officer in Welsh Government for a number of years. My background is steeped firmly in cancer palliative care, and through my background, I absolutely have always valued and recognised the importance of clinical supervision. What I'm going to do is, just from a leadership perspective, just give a bit of an overview about where we're at in Wales, and then hopefully we'll have some time for discussion around that. So as we know, the last 5 years have placed unprecedented pressures on our workforce across NHS and other sectors. And what that's done is reinforced a need for a consistent approach around, and we call it in Wales, career spanning support for our staff and for our teams. And this has got to be part of how we work, what our policy long term is. It's not just something that we think about afterwards. We are looking to build this from the outset into how we work. So our career spanning support does look at preceptorship programs for newly registered nurses or new to Wales nurses, and that takes us through to restorative clinical supervision and providing that ongoing support throughout the careers. We've got to ensure that staff wellbeing is embedded into our approach. So because of this, we commissioned a scoping project within our office to review current practices around, I'm going to focus now on the clinical supervision, not the preceptorship, to examine best practice internationally and to use that to inform a policy direction for us in Wales. So we know that restorative clinical supervision is proven, it's well evaluated, and it's highly valued in other professional groups. We had it well embedded in midwifery and psychology in Wales, and the evidence strongly suggests that extending the approach to nursing would bring benefits. So that was what we got from our original scoping. The project that we did specifically focused on nursing because of the scale within the workforce and the commitment made by the CNO to look at this in our priorities 22 to 24. But of course, we recognise that our Health Education Improvement Wales, our commissioning organisation, are looking at the approach that I'm going to talk about in a moment and expand that to other professional groups. So this work that we've done is an key step towards having a more supported workforce, ensuring that nurses receive structured. So I think Charlotte talked about the formalisation, the structured ongoing support at every stage in the careers. So I am now going to just give you a little bit of I just want to open up and pull over what are our approach and principles. So we recognise that for clinical supervision to be effective, it's got to be prioritised as a quality and safety measure, which is why our approach has come out with a principles which we have mandated. So clinical supervision theory. So there are only 5 of these, which I'm just going to give you a brief overview. I've got them in front of me here. So clinical supervision theory and practice will be included in the nurse induction period, taking a person-centred approach and promoting a healthy culture. Organisations must provide protected time for staff to access and provide restorative clinical supervision in all settings, with its inclusion in structured preceptorship programs. Organisations will organise, enable and ensure restorative clinical supervision processes are in place, facilitating its delivery, monitoring and evaluation. Supervisors will have access to supervision, training and professional support network. Access to restorative clinical supervision is mandated. The minimum standard is 1.5 hours per nurse 4 times a year. Please note this is the minimum standard. And a restorative model of clinical supervision will be delivered flexibly via group, one-to-one, face-to-face or online based on the needs of the supervisee. So supervisor, if we do have supervisor groups, there'll be no more than 6 individuals. So this is the approach that we have taken in Wales. We introduced this approach through a Welsh Health Circular, which we published in March 2024. And we published that through, so that's how we will mandate in Wales. This is what we do for the profession. And we published that through a national position statement, which I'll put in the chat afterwards. Now, what we did agree was that we would have a phased implementation, recognising that different organisations are at different levels of implementation. And we did receive last summer, as requested, updates on their plans in organisation about how they're going to work towards achieving what we had set out. So I'm really pleased to say, so following last summer, this summer, we expect full implementation across organisation. Now, when I say full implementation, that is not across every single ward. I have not had confirmation of that, but every organisation has got their plan in motion to be implemented. From our perspective, what has made the difference here was the leadership approach taken from the CNO, and recognizing the strategic importance of restorative clinical supervision, recognizing the workforce well-being and retention. We have got a national program for a national retention program for the workforce, where we have retention leads in every health board, and restorative clinical supervision is key and underpins that program of work, providing that structured support. We've aligned this with our national policy, which is key. It links to our Nurse Staffing Wales Act, ensuring that we've got a supported workforce to deliver the patient care. It supports our national strategy around a healthier Wales and the vision there by embedding well-being focused on leadership and resilience. Not a word I love, but it fits well here in this context. It fits with our approach around quality and patient safety and improvement, and we have a duty of quality and a duty of candour here in Wales, and it absolutely fosters a culture of learning rather than a culture of blame, which helps contribute to our safer healthcare environments across Wales. So leadership role in embedding is I guess championing that supportive culture. We expect our leaders at every level to advocate for psychological safety, where the staff feel valued and able to reflect openly. We want to be in a position where restorative clinical supervision isn't new, isn't a policy position that we need to implement because it's mandated, but it's something that absolutely underpins our supportive culture across NHS Wales. The Welsh Health Circular mandated for NHS Wales, but I'm pleased that other health sectors have adopted and have taken these principles to consider within for their workforce. So integration into workforce strategies is another ongoing trend that we have with this. And it's key to recognise the investment in the resources. We didn't have a pot of money to come with this, as has been said already. This is something that our staff should have access to, ensuring that they have that protected time. But we do, and we are investing in the P&A programme for a number of individuals, but our gold standard is that everybody will have the restorative clinical supervision. We are currently working through some challenges, not resistance, but it is about shifting mindsets. We recognise the workforce capacity and the time constraints. So I would say it is an ongoing consideration in what we do and how we work. So if I pause Grace there, if that's okay.
Thanks, Jill. And I think, you know, and thank you both of you for coming and sharing your perspectives. And I'm just kind of reflecting on what we've spoken about on the other sessions as well. And it's really clear that clinical supervision has all these positive benefits at all levels of the health and social care system. Yet we still have these challenges, don't we, getting it into practice. And one of the key things, I think, is what you said, Charlotte. It's that shared responsibility, isn't it? When you are working together to achieve something, but there has to be a leader in that, and there has to be a champion that starts that. So I just want to kind of open it up to people here. Having heard from Jill and Charlotte, does anyone have any comments or questions about what you've heard so far before we move forward? Joanne, go on.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Jill. Hi, Charlotte. Fabulous to see you both, and thanks so much for joining us. So yesterday I was at a nursing conference, and we talked about there was a whole workshop on clinical supervision, and it was really interesting because somebody at the beginning said, I've got to apologise, Joanne, because this is not about restorative clinical supervision. This is about clinical supervision. And I thought, bingo. That is, it was so interesting that was, you know, that we talked about it, because I'm really, really serious when I talk about the restorative nature of clinical supervision, because we know that within lots of professional groups, management supervision is really important, and clinical supervision is really important when you're reflecting on your clinical practice and you know, the effect of that on you. This is not that, and I think that's why it's been really tricky to get this into policy and practice, because people are still a little bit confused as to what it is that we're actually trying to do. So I'm really thrilled, Jill, that we are now all of us on this kind of same page around putting restorative before we start talking about clinical supervision, because to me then that absolutely separates it all off, and there's three lots and it's all brilliant. Let's get on with it.
Absolutely agree. We'd had similar conversations in our scoping work, Joanne, in Wales.
Thanks, Joanne. And just it links to something, Peter, you've popped in the chat around a common generic framework. And I think one of the challenges we have is that, you know, there isn't a common understanding of what we mean by clinical supervision, and different professions have different ideas, different places. We have, you know, we're in a global community here, and different countries might have different perceptions on what we actually mean by clinical supervision. So yeah, just because there's been a few comments in the chat, so I wanted to highlight that. I don't know if there's anything you want to say about that, Peter. I don't want to put you on the spot.
Hi there. Don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I appreciate. I'm sorry, everyone, because I do keep popping up, and I mean, Joanne, I think it is, has followed for a while on Twitter. So, but what I can do, perhaps to sum up, is there's a blog post I can point to. Brian Hodges created the model in the 80s, and Brian was qualified in what was then mental handicapped nursing. Of course, times have moved on. Brian passed away actually in 2022, but for Brian, pivotal for him was the politics of health. And I mean, I came across the model doing the community mental health nursing certificate. And of course, when you think about the focus on consent, mental capacity, DOLS, the Human Rights Act, sort of nationally and globally, and you look at where geopolitics is today, and also actually the first SDG points to security. If you don't get that right, nothing else follows. You know, so the politics in health and the health in politics, you know, the health ability of our leaders globally. You know, we've seen that with President Biden, whichever way, you know, your interpretation. So the fact that Hodges' model includes, it comes with a political domain. So it sort of encourages you to consider, you know, your situation politically and that of the other party, whether that's a client, patient, carer, a family, a couple in a relationship situation. And of course, during COVID, you know, different groups. So I'll pop that post in and just appreciate your patience with me, because as I say, it's just a real gift for students, because the full title of the model, Hodges Health Career Care Domains Model, the health career in there relates to a person's life chances. And those life chances, of course, even before conception, they impact on your subsequent health career. So that's key. But thanks, Grace, and all.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for sharing that. And there is a link in the chat. So what we can do is we can make sure any resources, because I can see, Jill, you've shared one as well, any resources that people share in the chat, we'll make sure they're on the website for people that are watching afterwards as well. So yeah, thank you for that. Sorry, I've just got distracted by what you've said, Fiona, in the chat as well. And I don't know if you want to say it, or do you want me to read out what you're thinking about? Because I think that's a really important point for when we're thinking about influencing and the challenges people might come across. Would you like me to say it? Thanks, Fiona. So Fiona's just put about empowering staff to access restorative clinical supervision and the cost implications. I can't say that word this morning, are not being considered. And I think that's a really key thing as well when you're thinking about influencing. What are the cost implications of clinical supervision? Because actually, you know, it costs money, doesn't it, out of your day? If your time costs money to an organisation, yet the benefits, and so we do have an article on our website, and I'll pop it in the link in the chat when we're doing another activity, where we actually looked at the cost of, you know, how much does it cost to offer a newly qualified nurse clinical supervision for a year, and it was about 500 English pounds for the year, which, you know, isn't a small amount, but it's not a massive amount. And economics is really, really complicated. But the latest, certainly within England, estimations is that if a newly qualified nurse, a newly registered nurse, leaves their post, it costs twice their wage plus on costs to replace them. And so for us in England and Wales, I think we're on the same agenda for pay, that is about £75,000. So when we think about well-being, you know, and retention, which is what Jill talked about, actually that is a massive cost saving, isn't it? If you are supporting people to stay in work and stay happy in work, that is a huge cost saving. And I think all of these kind of discussions that we've been having, it shows that, sorry, Jill, go on.
No, it was when you finished, Grace. Thank you.
No, I was going to move on to the next activity. So you go first.
Oh, I was just going to say, so with the cost, when I said that we didn't put, but what we do have is we have an uplift, an uplift within our establishments to support the education, the development. So we're doing a review of all our mandatory and statutory training again. And we're looking at what we need to do to ensure the workforce have the right support. Now, clinical supervision is 100%. As I said, we have mandated that within. So whilst we haven't put funding in, there are establishment uplifts. We are quite fortunate with our 26.9% uplift in many areas where we have the Act, and we're looking at that in other wards. So there are ways, and it's got to be seen as core rather than a nice to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. And I think, yeah, when you see it as part of your role, that is then different as opposed to an added cost, isn't it? And I think, you know, what I've heard and what is clear from what everyone's saying is there is this massive support for clinical supervision. But actually, in order for it to become, you know, business as usual in practice, we need to work together to be able to implement this. And we need to think about, you know, when you think about influencing other people, you need to think about actually what's important and matters to that person. So what's important and matters to a someone, you know, in America, I think bedside nurses, we'd refer to them as staff nurses in the UK. So someone that's very clinically focused might have different things that are important to them about clinical supervision than the chief nurse of an organisation. And actually what we want to do is we want to bring all these thoughts together and have a shared responsibility for actually implementing it. And one way you can do this, and you can gather people's thoughts and you can share them and think about how you implement together, is an activity called Claims, Concerns and Issues. And so this is quite old. Goober and Lincoln were writers around kind of more participatory and fourth generation evaluation. So this is actually an evaluation method as well. And they talked about, when we talk about participatory evaluation, it's the people that are experiencing something doing the evaluation, not necessarily an external person. We use this activity at FoNS all the time. It's a really, really useful activity to gather people's thoughts and to think about how do we move forward together. And so it involves firstly individuals thinking about for themselves and then having a collective discussion. And so claims are positive things. And so in this case, we would want to think about what is positive or good about clinical supervision and what's going well in our area at the moment in relation to clinical supervision. Concerns are, what are we worried about? You know, what are the challenges we're going to come across or what's not going well? And then when we know about the positives, we know about the concerns everyone has, we think about questions. So we would call these critical questions. So what, who, where, when, how type questions. So what questions can I ask of myself and my organisation to move forward? So to be able to almost solve some of these concerns and and use our positives to do that. So for example, for clinical supervision, a claim might be what we've talked about. There is some evidence that it supports well-being. A concern might be we don't have the time to do this. And then a question might be, so how do we prioritise time to be able to have an experienced clinical supervision in practice? And so, as I say, the process of doing this, it starts with thinking for yourself, what are your positives? What are your concerns? What questions does this bring up for you? And so to have a go at it, I thought we'd use a bit of a Padlet. So this might go terribly wrong because IT is never a fun thing. So I'm going to pop a link in the chat. And I think, Martin, you popped this in earlier as well. So you might have already seen this. So I did have the QR code for it, but I've obviously lost that now. I'm going to pop a link in the chat. And this takes you to something called a Padlet. So if I share this now, if you have never used Padlet before, it's a really nice online whiteboard. And so what you can do, if you want to do it on your phone, I will just very briefly share a QR code as well. So I'll just leave that up for a second. If people want to do it on your phone. Oh, I think I can pin it. Ah, brilliant. So it's in the top corner, so you should be able to see that. And so when you come on this, you can see there is a section for claims, a section for concerns and a section for issues. So I just want to give you a moment now to think about yourself and click on the little add button here, and add a comment in. So add, what are your claims, or what is positive or good about clinical supervision for you? What's going well in your area in relation to that? And just add them as a comment underneath. And then add your concerns. What are the challenges and what's not going well? And then think about, what questions does this bring up for you? What open questions, what critical questions do you want to ask either yourself, your teams, your organisation in relation to clinical supervision? Give everyone a moment to do that. And for those watching afterwards, this will be available until the end of the challenge. So we'll pop the link on the thing. And if you cannot access it, because I know some places are not as friendly on Padlets and block it, you can pop these in the chat as well, and we will add them later, so you've got a collective. Just give everyone another couple of minutes to add anything to that. And then, as I said, we will leave it up, so you will be free to add to it or use it for part of your challenge as well. Just give everyone one more minute. So you can see now people are starting to add. And when you do this, or you use something like this, so the first thing is to think about yourself and for others to think about themselves. And you can do this, you know, if you're face to face with post-it notes or with an online whiteboard like we've had. You could do it anonymously, or you can have people having their names. And then the idea is, once you've done this, you come together as a collective and discuss discuss the positives that you do it, and that can tell you a bit about why you're doing it as well. What do you want to achieve from this? You talk about your concerns, and then you have questions that you can then think about together. And so, for example, one of the questions that we have here is, how can I align this with my organisational strategy? So that might be something that you want to think about within your concept note, thinking about when you want to influence. How do you align clinical supervision with what policies and procedures you might already have within your workplace? And so the idea is, you need to know what you need to know first, and that's where the questions come in. And once you have the questions, it's about a collective responsibility for answering those together and making decisions together about how you're going to move forward, because that is how we achieve things. That is how we do it. We don't do it in isolation. There's no I in team, but actually change needs facilitation and leadership, and it needs someone to take that first step to bring everyone together to start talking about that. So I will stop sharing this now. As I said, this is a Padlet, and we will share the link, and we will leave this Padlet open for the remainder of the challenge, so that you can access it, and it might give you some ideas, some thoughts, and please do add on your thoughts, and for those watching later on, please do go on it and add your thoughts and have a look through, and you can also respond to people's comments and like people's comments as well. So yeah, the link will be on the website, as well as a guidance to facilitate a activity like this, which is on the PowerPoint, which will also be on the website. So I'm going to close this activity there and then just open up. We've got sort of just under 10 minutes left to do a bit of a Q&A session. Does anyone have any thoughts on anything we've covered today? Any questions for anyone in the room, really? Aisha, go on.
Grace, I know we had a few people joining as the session's gone on, and it would be really good just to remind people of the date, the deadline date for submission. I know you've shown us, you took us to the page where on Nursing Now Challenge that tells people what they need to do, etc. But for those people on the call, it would be really good just a little reminder of that date, what the prize is, and maybe it was great to hear you give a suggestion of someone's comments there on the Padlet. They might use that, for example, as their concept note. So I just think people might be on this call now thinking, well, if I applied, what's the process? When is the deadline date? And what might I win? Because our Global Solutions initiatives, if you look on Nursing Now Challenge website, we have had several, all with, really fantastic organisations, from the World Health Organization to FoNS, for example, to Sabin. So these are, really key organisations who are doing essential work in the workforce space. And the prizes have been very important for raising the profile of the nurse who wins. And in fact, our last one we've just had with Sabin were 3 students from Africa, and we couldn't differentiate. So the 3 of them won. They were all so amazing, and we're taking forward their work with some other global organizations. So there is opportunity here for you. I would really suggest, if you yourself are not going to do it, go to your clinical area, speak to your colleagues, tell them it's not just we've heard about clinical supervision, we're going to action it, and I'm going to take action and apply for this concept note. And if you're not in it, there's no chance of you winning it. So you've got to be in it to win it. And, just take that step. Just do it. And think about what is possible. And even if you don't win, the fact you've actually done it and articulated something about clinical supervision, about your workplace, means that you are engaging more deeply with it, and hopefully will encourage you and others to take it forward. And you could take it to your clinical area. I'm sure Charlotte would love if some of her nurses arrived with a concept note and said, Charlotte, we've done this, we've written this, what do you think? That would be music to her ears, I'm sure. So yeah, Grace or Charlotte or Joe, if you could just say a bit more about the prize and encourage other people to apply. I think that's what we want. We want lots of applications. Okay. Deadline the 2nd of May.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, I'll start, shall I? And then I can hand over to other people. So
Thank you.
yeah, for so there are guidelines on the website. So what we would like you to do for this challenge is develop a plan to build regular protected time for restorative reflective practice through clinical supervision in your workplace. And so watching these webinars is going to give you lots and lots of thoughts about what you can include in your concept note, and including looking at that Padlet and thinking about what others are thinking. So I was saying at the start, we'd like you to write a concept note. If you want to be creative around this writing, you know, we're really open to artwork, drawings. We would be really, we're really open to that. I've just thought then you could sing a song. That's just because we were talking about music before we came on here. So yeah, we've got in here what we'd like to include in your concept note. So think about your context, think about where you're either working or studying now, and what does clinical supervision look like there? And there's some prompt questions here. And then why would clinical supervision be important in your areas? And then we'd like you to develop a plan to encourage the acceptance of clinical supervision in your workplace. And finally, think about how the prize will help you, or prize and also the initiative in the challenge itself, because this challenge is about you thinking about your workplace and clinical supervision in there and how you could move it forward. And so the prize is a place on one of our resilience-based clinical supervision champion programs. So it's a virtual program. We're hoping to go global with this with the prize, so we'll have lots of people, and it's a small group, so there'll be 6 people, and it's a real chance to connect with each other, experience reflective practice, and experience a restorative model of clinical supervision, but also think about how you can facilitate that back in practice. So you become a champion of resilience-based clinical supervision, and you would become a facilitator, which is absolutely brilliant. And we talked a bit more about resilience-based clinical supervision in our first webinar, so I would say go back and have a watch of those. But the outcomes are really fantastic, both for individuals, teams, and organisations as well. So yeah, Charlotte, I don't know if you want to say how delighted you'd be if someone came to you with a concept note. Not to put words in your mouth and assume you would be, but hopefully you would be.
Oh, Grace, I would be delighted. Yeah, I mean, I guess from my perspective, absolutely. What I would encourage people to do. So some of you might be sat here thinking, oh, you know, it's beyond my scope. I haven't got authority. I haven't got hierarchy. I haven't got these things behind me to be able to do this. But I would challenge back to you that innovation sits at every level, change sits at every level, and if we don't start to work outside of the uncomfortable, we'll never be able to make change happen or make innovation happen, because it sits in the uncomfortable. And so part of that, you know, I'm a very open person, so of course I'd be really happy to get this letter, but actually, how is it that you're going to be able to demonstrate to somebody that these things will impact on a wider perspective? You've got a bigger picture, you've got a bigger vision, and you want to help this area, this work, this place to come along that journey, and you're willing to do a lot of the footwork for that. So it's demonstrating what you're actually saying you want to do, what you want to achieve, and how you plan to do that, and what you need, which is the support, essentially. You know, we talked about a prize. The prize is actually a really great prize to have. It's actually a very prestigious program, so actually that is a great prize. But part
one of our best prizes. It's one of
it's a very good one.
Yeah.
I'm saying thinking, well, I wish that was around when I
might apply myself.
Yeah, exactly. But additional to that prize is also about the contribution you bring and the impact you can have by doing this work. So being part of that, not only are you getting a benefit of a really good outcome of going onto the program, having a great opportunity in front of you, actually think about the impact you could have and the things that you could do just by simply going for it. And also, you know, work on yourself in terms of, you know, your motivation of where you want to get to, what you want to do, how you want to achieve things. This is all part of development. Is going for things like this, writing this, you know, being part of that process. This is all part of personal development. So think about it in that regard as well. And again, there's people out there who want to support and help you. So if you feel that's a bit overwhelming, you're not really sure where to start, talk to peers, talk to colleagues, talk to people in this chat, you know, talk to me. I'm happy to support, help you, or advise on, you know, read something through, anything like that. So do reach out to people around you because people want to help you. You just need to have the courage to ask. That's the important bit.
Fantastic. Well said. Thank you, Charlotte. That is absolutely perfect. Very inspirational and really great to hear from someone who is so passionate about clinical practice and is in a role who is there to support others, support their nurses within their hospital, and is the person that people could go to with these ideas. So it's really lovely to hear that from you. Thank you.
I don't even know what to say after that. I think that was
It's so
perfect.
nice.
But
I
yeah,
know.
it's a nice end to the webinars and our challenge. So I think just to finish off, I think I'll hand over to you, Joanne, to
Thanks, Grace.
follow on from that.
Yeah, no, I can't really. It's like drop the mic. It's dropped. Yeah, I'm thinking about our early career nurses, midwives, and allied health professionals. We've got some really exciting things going on in the UK now, and I'm just really thrilled that Wales are embracing the professional advocate role, because in England now we've moved on, and the professional advocate role is beyond nursing, but it was born in nursing, and it's really helped us to differentiate the restorative nature of clinical supervision away from the other forms of supervision, which are all equally important. But really, you know, thinking about our student nurses, our student midwives, student allied health professionals, and medics as well. I mean, you know, we are all one team. So the long game is very much in sight. And you know, I think my takeaway today, certainly from Jill, is that you need stamina for this. You need stamina. You need stamina as a government chief nurse. You need stamina as a leader within your own organisation, because if you truly and intrinsically believe that this is the right thing to do, it will not be easy. And that's why we're, you know, coming together under the initiative with Nursing Now Challenge, but also with our own communities of practice at FoNS. You know, we're talking to people all over the world now, which we weren't doing 5 years ago, and that's all down to Grace. It's been absolutely fantastic. So I want this conversation to continue. I've got a meeting with Sue Tranker when I get back from leave, which is going to be amazing. I can't wait. And you know, let's just see how we get on together as a community of practice. But you know, we're all here. We're here. So talk to us.
Fantastic.
Thank you, everybody. Fabulous.
Well, thank you, Jo and Grace, for this wonderful last 3 sessions that you've put together, delivered with enthusiasm, informative. We have had hundreds of people engage from all over the world, and it just shows that this is very relevant. And Grace, you're right. It looks different in different contexts, cultural contexts. But our cultural context here in the UK is not what we think it is. It is multicultural. And, you know, it is about, you know, tuning in to what people themselves feel and want. And so we continue to work on it. We are so pleased that we were able to do this Global Solutions Initiative with you. It continues. Let's see what we get. We will push it out into our networks this session today and encourage people to apply. We ask everyone here at the end of all our sessions, I'm generally, if I can, just say, can you just do one action from today Ask yourself that. What could that be? It might be applying for the concept note, or it might be telling someone about it, or sharing your thoughts with people in hospital, having other conversations, sharing it. That's what we need to do. Get it out there. When you're stimulated by things like this, get it out there, speak to other people. So I would challenge you, one, because we are the Nursing Now Challenge, what's your one action to take away today from our fantastic session with FoNS? Thanks so much, everybody. It's been joyful. Have a wonderful rest of the day, afternoon, morning, evening, night time, wherever you are in the world. And I know we've actually had someone from the University of the West Indies, who we chat on the chat there at the beginning. People from everywhere. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for your contribution to our speakers. Charlotte, it's just joyful seeing you again. You look and sound amazing. It's brilliant. My wee heart is having a wee flutter. I want to give you a big hug. Jill, I'm not going to be so, we've not met, but it's lovely to meet you. I was going to say, my wee heart's fluttering, and I'll give you a big hug as well. Probably would if I was with you. But it's so great. Delighted. Congratulations on your new role. That is absolutely wonderful. You're now on our radar, Nursing Now Challenge. We'll probably be in touch with you. And it's great to see the new Deputy CNO from Wales. We are supportive of you in your role. Please reach out to us when you can. Thank you, everyone. We're overrunning, so I will say bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Take care. Bye. 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 Thank you. Bye.